Every culture on Earth invented the dragon. Chinese dragons, Norse dragons, Aztec feathered serpents, Aboriginal Australian rainbow serpents, West African python deities, European dragons guarding treasures in caves. Cultures separated by oceans, cultures with no possible contact with each other for tens of thousands of years, all of them independently arrived at the same creature. A massive reptilian being, often serpentine, often associated with water, with the sky, with the underworld, or with all three simultaneously. Often guarding something of immense value, often defeated by a hero in the central myth of the culture that created it. When something this specific appears independently across cultures with no contact with each other, anthropologists and folklorists have to ask a question that sounds almost absurd. What if they weren't inventing something? What if they were remembering something? They were not inventing, they were remembering. In this video, we're exploring the dragon through 4 lenses. What paleontology and cognitive science actually suggest about where the dragon image may have originated, and it reaches back further than almost anyone expects. What psychology reveals about why the human brain is uniquely primed to fear and recognize serpentine and reptilian forms, a finding with deep evolutionary roots. The what if. What if ancient humans encountered physical evidence that directly shaped what became the most universal mythological creature in human history? And the spiritual and symbolic dimension. What the dragon has represented across virtually every tradition on Earth, and why it occupies such a complex and often contradictory symbolic position in every one of them. By the end, you may never look at a fossil, a snake, or an old map with a blank space marked, "Here be dragons," the same way again. One of the most compelling scientific explanations for the worldwide emergence of dragon mythology involves something remarkably direct. Ancient peoples encountering the fossilized remains of dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals with no framework for understanding what they were looking at. Adrienne Mayer, a historian of science at Stanford University, has spent decades documenting what she calls geomythology, the study of how ancient cultures interpreted geological and paleontological phenomena through myth. Her research found that regions of the ancient world rich in dinosaur and other large vertebrate fossils correspond closely with regions that developed particularly elaborate dragon and giant creature mythology. In ancient China, one of the richest dinosaur fossil regions on Earth, large bones were regularly unearthed by farmers and were specifically identified as dragon bones, ground into powder and used in traditional medicine for over 2,000 years. The practice continues in some places even today. In ancient Greece, the historian Pausanias documented local traditions identifying massive fossilized bones, almost certainly from extinct mammals such as mammoths or woolly rhinoceroses, as the remains of giants, heroes, or monsters from myth. The griffin, a creature combining lion and eagle features that appears throughout Greek and Scythian art, has been specifically linked by Mayer's research to the fossilized remains of Protoceratops, a horned dinosaur whose skeletal structure bears a striking resemblance to the mythological creature, found in exactly the region where griffin mythology was most prominent. There is a specific reason fossilized remains were so often interpreted as serpentine or reptilian rather than as some other kind of creature. When large vertebrate skeletons are exposed through erosion over long periods, the most commonly preserved and most visible structures are often long, curving spinal columns and rib formations. Structures that, to an observer with no training in comparative anatomy, would naturally suggest something elongated, coiled, and snake-like, especially when discovered partially buried or weathered into segments. What makes this hypothesis so compelling is not just the visual resemblance. It is the cognitive problem that fossils presented to ancient observers. Before the development of modern geology and the concept of deep time, there was no available framework for understanding that the Earth was old enough to have once been inhabited by creatures that no longer existed. The only available explanatory framework was myth. The bones had to belong to something, and that something had to fit within the existing cosmology of gods, monsters, and ancient battles. This is not a story of ancient peoples being foolish or unscientific. It is a story of remarkably careful and consistent observation, interpreted through the only framework available to explain something genuinely extraordinary: physical evidence of creatures larger and stranger than anything in the observable living world. Evolutionary psychologist Lynn Isbell has proposed what is now one of the most influential theories in primate cognitive evolution: that the exceptional visual acuity and threat detection capabilities of the primate brain, including the human brain, evolved specifically in response to the evolutionary pressure of avoiding snakes. Research consistently finds that humans, including very young infants with no prior exposure to snakes, detect snake-like shapes in visual arrays significantly faster than they detect other potentially threatening stimuli. This response appears to be present from extremely early in development and shows characteristics of being substantially innate rather than entirely learned. The amygdala, the brain's primary threat detection center, shows measurably faster and stronger activation in response to snake and serpentine imagery compared to many other threatening stimuli, even when the exposure is extremely brief, faster than the conscious mind can process. If the human brain carries a deep evolutionary predisposition towards rapid, visceral fear responses to serpentine shapes, a predisposition that predates not just human culture, but the human species itself, reaching back tens of millions of years into primate evolutionary history, then the consistent emergence of serpentine monster mythology across unconnected human cultures becomes considerably less mysterious. The dragon in this framework is not a creature any single culture invented from nothing. It is the externalization of a fear response that was already present in the human nervous system before mythology existed, combined in many cases with direct physical evidence in the form of unexplained massive bones. The two streams, innate fear and physical evidence, converging independently in culture after culture to produce remarkably similar results. Medieval and Renaissance maps frequently marked unexplored or dangerous territories with dragon imagery and the phrase that has become a cultural touchstone: "Here be dragons." What if this was not simply decorative or superstitious? What if the dragon functioned across cultures and across centuries as a kind of folk memory system, a way of encoding and transmitting genuine information about danger, about the unknown, about the strange physical evidence the natural world occasionally presented, in a form that could survive without writing, without scientific literacy, passed down through generations who had no other system for preserving this kind of knowledge? Myth, in this understanding, is not simply fiction. It is compressed information, true things encoded in a form that could be remembered, retold, and transmitted across the vast stretches of time before written language existed to preserve facts in any other way. What if every culture that ever told a dragon story was in its own way doing science, observing something real, failing to explain it correctly, but refusing to ignore it.
What makes the dragon one of the most fascinating symbols in comparative mythology is not simply its universality. It is the fact that its meaning is almost completely contradictory depending on which tradition you examine, sometimes within the very same culture across different periods of its history. In Chinese tradition, the dragon, the long, occupies one of the most exalted symbolic positions of any creature in the culture's entire cosmology. Far from being monstrous or threatening, the Chinese dragon is associated with imperial power, with wisdom, with control over water and rain, and with benevolent cosmic forces that sustain agriculture and social order. The Emperor of China was traditionally understood to be the embodiment of the dragon, the Son of Heaven, whose authority derived from the same cosmic forces the dragon represented. To this day, the dragon remains one of the central symbols of Chinese cultural identity, deployed at celebrations, in art, and as a marker of strength and good fortune rather than danger. In Norse cosmology, Jormungundur, the world serpent, is a creature of such immense scale that it encircles the entire world, biting its own tail in a vast cosmic Ouroboros. Jormungundur is destined to fight Thor at Ragnarok, the end of the world, in a battle in which both will kill each other, the serpent's venom claiming Thor even as Thor delivers the killing blow. Here, the dragon serpent is neither purely evil nor purely benevolent. It is a cosmic force woven into the fundamental structure of fate itself, its destruction inseparable from the destruction of renewal of the world it helped define. In Aztec and broader Mesoamerican tradition, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, is one of the most important deities in the entire pantheon, associated with wind, with learning, with the dawn, and with the foundational mythology of human civilization itself. Quetzalcoatl was credited with giving humanity maize, with creating the current age of the world, and with descending into the underworld to retrieve the bones from which humanity was remade. The Temple of Quetzalcoatl at Teotihuacan and the Great Pyramid at Chichen Itza, where the setting sun creates the illusion of a serpent descending the staircase on the equinox, represent some of the most sophisticated architectural engagements with serpent symbolism anywhere in the ancient world. In Aboriginal Australian traditions, among the oldest continuous spiritual traditions on Earth, with roots extending back tens of thousands of years, the rainbow serpent is one of the most significant and widespread creator beings, associated with the formation of rivers, mountains, and water holes. The rainbow serpent is understood as a primal creative force from the dreaming, the foundational period in which the physical world was shaped. What makes the rainbow serpent tradition particularly significant for this video is its sheer age. Some Aboriginal oral traditions describing serpent beings and geological formations have been documented by researchers to potentially preserve genuine information about geological and climatic events from thousands of years in the past, a living demonstration of the same principle explored earlier: myth as a system for preserving real information across vast stretches of time. In numerous West African traditions, including those of the Fon and Yu peoples, the python is associated with Dawn, or Ido Huedo, a great serpent deity connected to the rainbow, to cosmic balance, and to the structural support of the universe itself, coiled beneath the world to keep it from collapsing. Across this tradition, as in so many others, killing a python was traditionally forbidden. The creature understood not as a threat to be eliminated, but as a sacred guardian whose presence sustained the fundamental order of existence. The dragon serpent's wildly contradictory symbolic meaning across these traditions, devastating monster in some, benevolent creator and protector in others, a being of cosmic neutrality woven into fate itself in others, suggests something important about what this creature actually represents at the deepest psychological and spiritual level. It is not fundamentally a symbol of good or evil. It is a symbol of power itself, raw, immense, and morally neutral power that can devastate or sustain depending on how it is approached, understood, and related to. Perhaps that is the oldest and most honest truth any culture ever encoded into myth, that the largest forces in existence, whether fossilized in stone, coiled beneath the earth, or activated by 10 million years of evolutionary fear, do not care whether we call them monsters or gods. They simply are, and what we make of them is entirely up to us. So was the dragon ever a myth? Scientifically, it may be one of the most successful pieces of evidence transmission in human history. Ancient peoples encountering genuine physical evidence of creatures beyond their explanatory framework and finding a way, however imperfect, to preserve and pass on the fact that something real and extraordinary had once walked the earth. Psychologically, it is the externalization of a fear response written into the primitive brain tens of millions of years before any human culture existed, surfacing again and again in remarkably similar form because the nervous system that produced it has never changed. And spiritually, it is one of the most complex and contradictory symbols any civilization has ever produced. Neither simply monster nor simply God, a vessel for humanity's oldest attempts to understand power itself, power that creates, power that destroys, power that simply is, indifferent to the names we give it. Every culture on Earth told a story about a great and terrible serpent. Maybe they weren't telling the same story by accident. Maybe they were all remembering the same thing. Did your culture or family have its own dragon or serpent story growing up? I want to hear about it specifically, where it came from and what it meant. Drop it in the comments. If you're new here, 9 other videos on this channel go just as deep. All 9 are linked below. And the next video turns to something every human being has experienced and almost no one has fully understood: music, and the man who scientifically proved its extraordinary power over the human brain and body. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and thank you for watching.